A lot of people are confused by music theory, and the nomenclature is largely to blame for this. There's a lot of jargon, and to make matters worse, people use the same term to mean different things and different terms to mean the same thing. But I think the heart of the issue is that music theory, like math, is a subject that builds on itself. With math, for example, if you don't understand basic functions like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division at an intuitive level, you won't get algebra. And if you don't get algebra, well, you can forget about even trying to understand geometry, trigonometry, or calculus. The same goes for music theory. There are a lot of higher concepts that will be completely lost on you if you don't get the fundamentals. Like Michael Jordan said, get the fundamentals down and the level of everything you do will rise. Learning the fundamentals of music theory is the key that will unlock so many possibilities for you, both in your writing and your playing. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. Coming up. So what are the fundamentals of music theory? Well, before I tell you that, I want you to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Go ahead. I'll wait. It's the major scale. A lot of us are familiar with the major scale, but we're never really given any understanding of it beyond, this is something you need to practice. Go practice it. Why aren't you practicing? But why do we need to practice it? Why is it so important? Well, you know what time it is. It's theory time.
Theory time!
Let's break it down a bit. First, what even is a scale? Let's ask Wikipedia. They define it as any set of musical notes ordered by fundamental frequency or pitch. So what this means is that a scale is a set of notes and it's either ascending or descending. That's fine and all, but how does this scale relate to music? It doesn't sound like any music we know. Well, other than maybe Mozart. What good does playing a set of pitches in ascending or descending order do for us? Well, let's see what happens when we ignore the ordering of the notes and just treat it as a set, playing the notes in some random order. Okay, it still sounds like these notes are cut from the same cloth, so to speak, but now it sounds a bit random and chaotic. Let's try and organize them a bit. And thus, a melody is born. And that melody came from a set of notes in no particular order, which we call a key center. When we put them in order, ascending or descending, that key center becomes a scale, which we can think of as just a means of organizing these pitches, making them easier to remember. So let's talk about that for a sec, the way we organize pitches. Western tonal harmony uses a pretty elegant system that we often take for granted. The major scale, which so many things are based on, including the minor scale, uses each letter of the musical alphabet once. So letters A through G. When you're playing a scale with these 7 notes, whichever note you start on is the root. If it helps you remember, just think of like the roots of a tree, where everything kind of grows out from there. So we'll get back to this musical alphabet thing in a second, but first let's talk a little more about the major scale. One way we can think about scales is by breaking them into what are called tetrachords. A tetrachord is a set of 4 notes where the outer 2 notes span the interval of a fourth, usually a perfect fourth. The interval is constant, but meanwhile we can manipulate the inner notes to get different sounds. So, long story short, there are a few different types of tetrachords, but today we'll be focusing on the major tetrachord. You can build a major tetrachord off of any note by going up a whole step, and then a half step. Now, the major scale consists of 2 major tetrachords, a perfect fifth apart. So for C major, this would be a C major tetrachord followed by a G major tetrachord. So together it sounds like this. Now let's try that in a few different keys. So there's an interesting pattern here. The major scale uses each note of the musical alphabet once and only once. No more, no less. What makes each key unique is that they each use a specific combination of accidentals to give us this whole step, half step scheme. For major, that scheme is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This explains why, for example, we sometimes call this pitch B flat, and sometimes we call it A sharp. It depends on context. If we're spelling an F major scale, we'd start on F, of course, and then walk up the musical alphabet. G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. In this case, we call this note B flat because if we called it A sharp, there'd be two A's and no B, and this just won't fly. Same thing for F sharp major. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F. We call this note A sharp because we can't have two B's and no A. And this note on the end here, E sharp, we don't call that F because there's already an F sharp. So each letter of the musical alphabet has its own unique place within a scale. And you may know that specific combination of accidentals as a key signature. The key signature goes at the beginning of a piece of music and tells you which notes are going to be sharp or flat throughout, so that any note you play within that musical alphabet fits right in that key center. So to summarize, a major scale can be thought of as each note in the musical alphabet arranged in ascending or descending order, where the note you start on is the root of the scale, and notes are given certain accidentals to satisfy the whole step, half step scheme. Now, why is this all important? Much of Western music is based on this scale. It explains many of the tendencies we hear in music, why we perceive some sounds as restful and some as restless. We get our chords from scales, and chords behave differently in the context of a key, depending on where in the key that chord came from. These chords have tendencies, especially in relation to their key. Some feel at rest, and some feel more restless and seem to point us in a certain direction. On a more practical note, if you're playing a kind of music that requires you to transpose or change the key of a song, the major scale gives you the formula needed to do this. If you're playing a song in the key of F, and the chords are D minor, C, B flat, F, but a singer wants to do this song in the key of C, what do? Well, if you know the Roman numeral values of each chord, or the scale degrees on which each chord is built, you can take those same chords and just plop them in a different key, no problem. Transposing a melody or chord progression requires you to know how that melody or chord progression relates to its current key, and how to preserve that relationship in the new key. Or you might be on a gig where a singer is insisting on playing a song you don't know. And when you say you don't know it, they say, oh, it's easy. It's a 2-5-1 followed by a 2-5 going to the 6, and then a 5-5, and then you go to the 4. If you're not quick enough with your scales to be able to follow along with these numbers, you'll get lost pretty quickly. But if you really know your scales, and somebody says play a 4 chord in the key of E flat, you can quickly jump to that A flat chord. This level of reflex will come with time and experience, but it will be better informed by knowing your scales inside and out, being familiar with the whole alphabet concept, and knowing your accidentals. So yeah, practice your scales, memorize them. Practice writing them out, just spelling them. Now, we didn't talk about minor, and minor is very important, but minor did come from major, at least that's one way of looking at it. Either way, becoming intimately familiar with your major scales will bring you so much closer to demystifying music theory and taking your writing and your playing to the next level. So yeah, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, stay tuned for more videos, and as always, happy practicing.